The area that I work in is really around strategy and about writing strategy, understanding what the problems are, and then hoping that other people like yourselves can find the answers for us with nice simple models or simple ways of collecting data that we can then use to find out what interventions we need to do as local authorities into the process. Next slide. So, I think it's fair to say for the local authority, we're very much at the start of our journey in terms of circular economy, understanding what that means to us for the city and for the local authority. And understanding what the principles are and how the circular economy will start to shape locally the existing economy that we actually have with existing businesses and how those need to change and shift. And we're trying to provide leadership within this agenda where we can do. And it's understanding what that role should be for us and the role that we need to play with lots of the other competing demands that we have within local authorities upon us. And I think it comes down to what does a circular economy actually mean for us as a local authority. And we're trying to work that through what those different demands are and where we should be. And for us, there are really two key customer groups, and one for us is a role as the largest employer within the city as well. So it's trying to understand the role of us as economic development and a regeneration role within the authority, the role of us as community benefit in terms of what the community benefits are of the circular economy, and as an organisation, we need to understand what role we should play in terms of the things that we purchase and we procure and the things we specify, because we can have a big impact in terms of stimulating and enabling that market to actually develop over time. So I just want to go through each of these now and just show some of the things that we're trying to think about it and where we are on some of these issues. So in terms of the circular economy for community benefit, what we need to understand is what benefit can be delivered through our communities, through the circular economy, that doesn't just emanate from sort of traditional approaches focused around design, manufacturing, remanufacturing and reuse, and start just, instead of just using our residents as being passive residents as the sorters within the circular economy. So what other role can residents actually play within this and what role can they be? And therefore we need to understand which parts of the process can have or should have a community element and a community role, and how does this support wider community development within our areas. And if we can have community energy, then can we have community circular economy? What does that look like and how do we develop that within the local authority, within local areas and within the urban context as well? And so it's trying to understand what that role should be and how that should develop. And so it comes down to that community and circular economy. How do we start to bring those three things together and understand what that role should be? That includes parts of the sharing economy that's been mentioned already, but how do we move beyond that and what role are tool banks, repair workshops, and what's a local authority's role in stimulating, enabling and supporting those roles within the local economy? And moving that forward. So in terms of the economic development and regeneration side of things, as a local authority, and we work with about 200 of our largest businesses within the economy. So every year we have members of staff that speak to each business at least once a year to find out how they're currently doing. Is there any assistance a local authority can do in terms of funding programs or in terms of developing that they're trying to do as a business, in terms of bigger warehouses, any skills shortages, those kinds of things, understanding what those are. And these are some of the businesses that we work with within the city. And quite a number of them are multinationals, some of them are very local to the area, but they're key within our local economy as a city. And we need to understand how we work with those businesses and how we can enable them to grow. And a lot of the work traditionally is focused around signposting to funding opportunities, advice services. But what we need to understand is actually what do we need to do that goes beyond the traditional role of economic development advice that we provide into the businesses. And that comes in two elements. One is actually understanding what that advice is, how we actually start to get circular economy principles into businesses' minds. They start to think about that and understand what opportunities there may be within their business to develop and grow in that area. But also for our advisors, because our advisors have been trained and have got the skills in traditional economic development relationships with businesses, which to make sure that they understand what circular economy means, where they can identify what those opportunities are within businesses, so they can give those right skills and knowledge and point them in the right direction. So there are two elements that we need to do in terms of improving the skills and knowledge of our staff, so they can then go and work with businesses more effectively. And I think one other element of this that is moving forward, and we're starting to understand. So there was a meeting this morning of our cabinet within the authority where we approved a smart city digital strategy. And we understand what role does a smart future hold in terms of the circular economy? What benefits and opportunities did that technology and digital innovation open up in terms of us being able to understand what resources are generated, how quickly they can be moved around, how business can know what's actually available. They can actually, there's a resource there I didn't know was available. We can use that, we can pull that in. And I think part of it is around, with a lot of businesses, particularly within the SME sector, within urban areas, they don't know what the opportunities are, where waste is being generated, where those opportunities might exist for them. And so it's understanding where those are and how we can build that understanding within the business sector. Also, crucially, it's about trying to understand how, in terms of the circular economy, we try and address some of the, I suppose, the waste elements that are required in the process. So, while smart opportunities are quite significant, traditionally smart technology, our phones, computers, 2 to 3 years we're throwing them away. If we need to lengthen those times, what impact that has in terms of how quickly the smart economy can develop, but how do we deal with these resource bubbles that are being created? Because at the moment, all of the waste has been outsourced to you as individuals, and then you just then outsource that to your local authorities for them to sort out the waste. How do we start to address those, and how can we use a better understanding of the model to actually make those changes? As an authority, it's understanding more deeply what our role is actually as a local authority. So we procure vehicles, which we rent. A lot of our vehicles, we actually rent them. So there's some of our electric vehicles. We procure a lot of catering within our building for meetings, but also for outside catering as well within our culture and leisure services. We've got office waste as well. So within our offices, we've got all the waste and procured things around there, from tables to chairs to lighting. And then we've got development that we do, so in terms of demolition, but also new construction. That in itself is a huge amount of money that we spend as a local authority, that either is our own money or money we get through funding regimes and funding programs. How do we build the circular economy into each of those elements? What are the opportunities there that we just don't know exist at the moment? And how do we actually identify through the specifications that we actually write, what do we put in there to ensure there's a circular economy element of the products that we purchase? What do we need to do to stimulate it? Because we have a buying power, and the circular economy is only going to work if people are prepared to buy the products that are produced and the products that can actually be remanufactured. So we need to be able to, as public sector bodies, start to stimulate that market and enable that to do that. We do it in terms of social value within our contracts at the moment, making sure that there are social benefits and increased social benefits in terms of education within schools, in terms of developing skills, taking on apprenticeships, all of those kinds of things. So how do we do that within terms of the circular economy? What should we be asking for? What should we be looking for when we're asking the questions, and how do we sense check that? And are there any quality marks that we need to look out for? You know, when we're actually procuring, that we know there's some element of certainty that what a company says it actually has is going to deliver. Because the problem that we've had historically is that we ask businesses to provide us with their environmental policies, and we just go, they've sent us one, and we go, thank you, and that's it. We don't check it, we don't look at it, we don't test them on it. And we can't afford to keep doing that and just saying, oh, you've sent us the right bit of paper, excellent. Oh, we'll feel good, and we'll go back and carry on things as normal. We can't afford to do this if we're going to change the economy and be an active player and stimulator in the whole process. So one of the things that we're doing as a council to try and engage with it, and it links back to some of the things that have been said, is around how you make sure that you get value out of products that are seen as waste. And one of them is around food that is used by dates or sell by dates. How do we start to bring that back into the economy? And one of the things we're starting to look at is the idea of a community shop. So community shops within the UK either work in two ways. They either are company related, so it's a community shop that's available to people that work for particular companies. So within the National Health Service, within hospitals, the community shops that have food that is still available, that isn't given out free. People can buy at a lower price to try and provide good food to people that are on lower incomes within the health service. But the same service can be provided within communities as well, where there are people that don't have a lot of money. It isn't free food, so it isn't it's like a community food bank. So it's one step up from a food bank, so people can go and buy food. It is good quality food, but it's lower than they would buy in the shops. But you've got all kinds of things of trying to make sure that you're not damaging other parts of the economy while you're doing that, but trying to extract the maximum value so that food doesn't just go straight to anaerobic digestion or something like that. We can try and get the calorific value out of it by putting it into people so they can carry on and do things. So it's trying to understand what our role is in that, and we're starting to explore that idea as an authority. We've also recently, and this was started by the private sector, there's a whole waste working party. And I think this can be put down to one person, which is Sir David Attenborough, and our current love affair with marine waste plastics. I say current because I remember in the mid-70s, late 70s, we knew what marine plastic waste was a problem then. We knew it's nothing new. It's been around for a long time. It's now in vogue again. So the private sector businesses within the city have come together around a focus initially around the marine plastics and how we try and reduce the amount of marine plastics. So a lot of the businesses there do beach cleanups around the River Humber, but we see it as an opportunity to look at other elements of their waste. So while it's just on plastic, we can start to look at other elements of waste, but also start to look at how they design and manufacture products as well, how they can produce efficiency there. And what are the opportunities to start to include some of the circular economy thinking, and what the opportunities are to bring those out and get businesses to share their waste more or understand the relationship they have with their supply chains a lot more and try to drive it down. Because unless big businesses drive it down through their supply chains and say, this is what we want, this is how we want you to work, it's going to be very difficult for a small business to say, we provide this product, will you buy it? It needs to come from large businesses as well as from the small. Which brings us on to the challenges that we have. And there are many challenges that we have as a local authority. I think if we leave aside the fact that we need more money and more people, which are bog standard ones every public sector person is going to say to you regardless when you go and see them is, I'd like some more people, I'd like some more money please. It's understanding what those opportunities are for us. And it's understanding, I think, where we need to go. So probably our first challenge really is actually how do we measure the growth and development of the circular economy locally? We don't know what it is. We've got no idea what practice is happening at the moment, how big it is, how extensive it is, what products it involves. And that's a really big challenge because then in terms of our economic development role, where do we need to intervene to offer the most value in terms of what we actually do? And we need to be able to capture so we can share and identify the opportunities to other businesses, but start to produce case studies that are locally relevant, that mean something to local people and to local businesses. And following on from this, we need to identify what support and stimulation that we actually need to provide to create new circular economy activity within the community sector and within the business sector as well. We need to understand all of those things. And as I said before, from an organisational point of view, it's understanding how we fit it into our specifications, what accreditation systems there actually are, and how trustworthy they are, and how we build that into big strategic initiatives that we take as a local authority, but ones that we fund as well. So how, for example, do you build, leaving Brexit aside, how do you build circular economy practices into the European funding regime? So it isn't something that's just done as a part of research projects around the circular economy, but how does that go into other ERDF bids and ERS bids within European funding? Because that's key, because unless all of the funding regimes that Europe provides start to inculcate this within it, then it just sits within a world, it sits siloed. And I think that's one thing that the public sector and within any country is guilty of, is we're very silo based, we think in silo, we don't think across the piece. And I think that's one thing we need to understand a lot better, how we actually do that. I think the other thing as well is actually how we overcome some of the fluctuations in the value of materials that have reached their end of use, and how we try and relate that to the value of raw materials as well. I think the biggest concern that we have within the plastics in terms of plastic recycling is that when the raw material, oil, the price of that drops, the bottom falls out of the plastic recycling market because the value is just gone. And I think that will change over time as we decarbonise and we have to leave a lot more of the oil in the ground. That will become almost a force of market change in terms of actually how the value that's applied to products that are already within the marketplace. But how do we try and stimulate that instead of waiting for that to actually happen? How do we actually create that value first? And finally, I think what I want to say is that I think one of the big stimulants that's going to come in terms of driving the circular economy, and really is I think an interesting time for this piece of research, is that on the 6th of October, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change produces its report on how we actually get to a 1.5 degree increase in temperature. What extra do we need to do based upon what we've done now? Within the UK, the government has said that the Committee on Climate Change will then do a report for the UK economy on what extra we need to do to get down to that 1.5 degree. A huge part of that carbon reduction, that step down, is going to have to come from a circular economy that is embedded in the local economy and the national economies across Europe. Because it's the one bit I think that we have unexplored in terms of what the carbon benefits and opportunities that creates. And when as a local authority we start looking at what the carbon emissions are as a city, we have reports that cover our transport emissions, our manufacturing emissions, but we don't have anything around waste. So we don't have what actually are the carbon saving benefits of waste within the local economy, and we really need to understand what that is. Thank you.
Great, slightly worrying overview of the complexity
Sorry.
of life. People thought, I know, but it's difficult to see what you're doing. Are there any questions?
Thanks for your presentation. I was wondering, some solutions could also be some circular economy measures could also be very low tech. You mentioned the shops that are minimizing footprints.
Yeah.
Are there any other solutions for stimulating out those things in terms of that sharing flow?
No. No, to be perfectly honest, no. I mean, I think within the UK, I suppose the second-hand clothes market has really been driven by charity shops within the UK, and we have if you're spending any time here, you'll see that on most shops, most streets, there's at least one charity shop, and you get clusters of charity shops as well. And it is a thriving economy, it has to be said, and it falls an important need, but it's an area of economy we haven't looked into. The food one is because it's food. Cost of food is a key issue within the UK at the moment in terms of some of the welfare benefit changes that have happened and the growth of food banks. But there is a gap between food banks for people that actually have nothing, and therefore and there are limits in terms of how often people can go to food banks and get parcels of food. But there are people that are paid but on very low wages, where even going to the shops like Aldi and Lidl is still expensive for them. It's trying to find, and it's finding a market for it, because a lot of the food still has a life. It just ends up in anaerobic digestion. That's a waste. It's better if it goes into the anaerobic digestion of humans, so they can do stuff, than actually just putting it somewhere else. So,
yeah. Martin, it's great talk. Thank you very much. I do quite a lot of work with Hull City Council on different kinds of things. I get to meet all kinds of different people who work for the City Council, economic regeneration, urban regeneration. How do you, without sort of dishing the dirt on colleagues, but how do you, so it's good to see the partnership with business, but I'm kind of interested as well how you coordinate, given that you've got many different pressures on you across the different sort of remits of the local authority. How do you coordinate, for example, what you're doing with, say, economic development or with urban regeneration and all the other things that are going on?
right.
Is that part of the challenge?
It is a challenge, yeah. It comes back to people. So there's only me. So that's the main challenge. It comes back to the point I made about it, that more people would be nice. But luckily I'm based within the economic development team, and the regeneration is based within my team as well, within the area I'm in as well. So there are opportunities, I think, probably more than if I was based traditionally in an environmental departmental section. And I think the fact that I'm based in economic development team recognises the importance, the role that we have within regeneration, because we are about reshaping the urban landscape. It doesn't always work. I think it's fair to say, that there are opportunities that get missed. But I think our working relationship is getting a lot better than it, over time. It increases the knowledge of the added value that can be added by considering, and some of that can be driven by other agendas. I think that's the important thing, is that for most local authorities now, a lot of the agenda is driven by revenue costs. So is it going to save the council money? Is it going to pay back? And so you just have to reframe your arguments that fits in what the priorities are at the time. And I think that's part of the cleverness of circular economy, or anything you're trying to do something new, is actually understanding what's the stimulus that will make that business or that organisation do what you want them to do. So I think you have to become a bit of a chameleon, really, and just change your spots, to who your audience is, to make them think it's their idea, and it does that, and it works in their favour when you're getting what you want. A bit devious, but yeah.
So you did mention public procurement and trying to integrate circular economy into that. I was wondering to what extent now a model that is getting a lot of attention, which is the Preston model of public procurement, where social and solidarity economy initiatives and cooperatives and also sustainability kind of oriented businesses and small scale businesses has a whole kind of integrated part of this Preston model, I guess, or tried to, or looked at it. I don't know.
No. I'll be honest, no. I'll be interested to hear more about it, actually. I'm not aware of the Preston model, so I'd certainly be interested to hear more about that. I think within our procurement process, it's very much delivered around cost. So it's a quality cost balance within all procurement that we have within the authority. And it tends to primarily be sort of like 60% quality, 40% cost. Depending on what the outcome they want, there may be more skewed towards higher quality than cost in some areas. But it's having the knowledge to actually how do we nuance that within each type of procurement, and so it's understanding where the higher value impact is that we can have, because we don't have the people resources to try and do it across the whole piece. So which parts of our buying can have the maximum benefit, and focusing on what the social benefits, the circular economy benefits are in those high value areas, and working with those. I think we have to be much more nuanced in terms of what we actually do as local authorities now, because of the environment that we work in. Because when it comes down to it for us, in terms of budgetary, it's adult and social care. Everything else has to follow adult and social care benefits. So if there's a pressure in that budget, every other budget gets skewed towards that, and quite rightly so. So you tend to work with a smaller piece of cake, so it's understanding where that value is that we can drive that.
I was curious about the role of the city in terms of municipal waste management. And recently, since China has stopped importing waste, how has it affected in a local city level?
It's, from speaking to my colleague at lunchtime, Paul, I think it's had something quite significant impact for us, as an authority, because there's a value that's gone out of the market in terms of who we pass the plastic waste onto. So yeah, it has an impact on us quite significantly. I understand that also, the trade tariffs as well that America have imposed as well has also impacted the value of our waste as well, because of the impacts in other economies. So within Turkey, I think they used to take our steel, our cans, and they've started to say, well, actually, we don't want them now, because they can take it for reprocessing, but then they've got to sell that on. If selling that on was into America as steel, then if there's tariffs there, that then feeds back. So I think it goes back to some of the points earlier on around the circular economy. It's understanding what those linkages are and how the knock-on effect in one area can have a negative effect somewhere else, and so it's understanding what those are.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Obviously, the market's changed on a week-by-week basis at the minute, whereas it used to be more predictable, shall we say. Now it's definitely lesser. With regards to China, still our cardboard is collected commingled with paper cans, plastic, other materials, sorted out of up at Hartlepool, and they've still got enough quality within the cardboard to export to China. But there's only cardboard going to China at the minute. We're not sending anything else there.
Awesome, thanks very much.
That's okay.
And this whole issue about knowing how much circularity is going on, etc., and what examples. Do you have a chance to sort of swap notes with other local authorities? Is there a forum to kind of exchange knowledge and see what works elsewhere?
I think at the moment we're all pretty much in the same situation. I think we're all starting to develop, look at circular economy, much realise that actually it's something we need to get organised about. So there's a meeting that we're going to, well, I'm going to in a couple of weeks, which is involving York, North Yorkshire and the East Riding, to look at developing a circular economy strategy. And I think we're all at the same point of understanding. We know it's there, the opportunity's there, but we've got to get all those bits in place and stuff like it's bringing everything down to sort of the local level and see where those local opportunities are, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.